This is actually my first Q&A that I've done where I'm asking questions, and I'm very excited about this because you are my hero. Welcome to our first How to Be Self-Employed community chat. I am here with Nama Bloom, and I am excited to ask her a number of different questions related to how the heck she got 30 million views across 2 videos on YouTube, and also how she approaches branding, personal branding, business branding, because I think she is my absolute 100% hero on this topic. So with that, Nama, I would love for you to share with us what is your entrepreneurial story. How did you get started with HelloFlow? Where do you see the opportunity, and what is the origin of this amazing business?
Thanks, Gina. So where to begin? I started noodling around the idea in late 2012. My husband and I were talking about this business, Man Packs, and if you're not familiar, they they have a subscription for men for underwear, and
Oops, we need to mute.
sorry.
Go ahead.
It's okay. So anyway, we were talking about the business, and I thought it was really interesting. Obviously, Birchbox was already around, but I thought the idea of having a subscription service for something that was a grudge purchase versus like a fun purchase was a really interesting one. And I started sort of playing around with the idea of, what's a grudge purchase for women, and how do you turn it into something better? And I very quickly, once I started asking myself, what do I need to buy every single month that I don't really enjoy buying, it didn't take very long to come up with tampons. So I played around with the idea for a little while. As soon as I had the idea, I started telling people about it and asking every woman I knew what they thought, and I got a lot of feedback. And really early on, one of my closest friends has a daughter who's now 14, but was, like almost 12. And she and I started talking about what was going on in her house, and the fact that her daughter didn't have her period yet, but it was imminent, and how to talk to her daughter about it, and whether or not her daughter would actually even want to engage in the conversation. And she's a good friend, and she let me basically be a fly on the wall in her house, not literally, but she would report back on a lot of these conversations, and she would ask a lot of her other mom friends about the experience. And I started thinking back to my experience as an adolescent, and I thought, maybe there's really something here. Like, this is a convenience play for someone like me, but there's this whole, generation of kids entering puberty, and how do you sort of make that whole experience a more positive one for them. So I launched the business in March of 2013. It was either February or March, I don't remember the day. And, to like very little fanfare. It was, I think I got a couple, there might have been a few press mentions, like in Tech Press. But Tech Press, at least in my experience, doesn't really drive much volume for a woman's oriented product.
In a shocking turn of events.
Yes, shocking turn of events. TechCrunch does not move merchandise for women's businesses, or at least it didn't a couple of years ago. So I launched, and I was, really just building incredibly slowly and sending out sample boxes for people to review, and just like slowly but surely slogging along. And on the side, also doing a bunch of marketing consulting work, because that was my background. And I had also been in the background working on this video, which is Camp Gyno, with a couple of friends. And that was really going to be the first, the first sort of test of what happens. Like, can I appeal to these moms and these girls? Like, the site at the time had a youth orientation, but I wasn't actually broadcasting that that's what I was trying to do. And I was kind of going to use Camp Gyno to see, does it resonate? Knowing that it would also resonate with a woman like me, because for me it's nostalgic.
Right.
So it took a really long time to make Camp Gyno happen. I think we were working on it about 9 months. I had no money. Everyone basically worked for free except for crew and cast. It was an incredibly lean production, but it was a lean production that was done by a lot of serious professionals. So it was, very lucky in that I was able to ask people in my life who actually knew what they were doing. And, we released it, and before we released it, Pete and Jamie, who are the writer-directors behind Camp Gyno, said, you've been talking about this period starter kit. We really think you should put it up on the site when we release the video. And I said, we don't really have it ready. And they were like, you have to do it. So I put a pre-order up, and that was, the video, went viral very quickly. I was completely not prepared, and we ended up, in addition to selling a bunch of subscriptions, we sold a few hundred of the starter kits, and they were $40 a piece at the time, and it was a pre-sale. We didn't know even all the components exactly, and I couldn't believe people were buying it without knowing more specifics about what would be in there. And I realized, okay, there's something here. So
the Camp Gyno video, that drove subscriptions, because sometimes you hear about with brand building and branding that it was great in terms of it went viral, it's social media friendly, but it doesn't actually translate to sales. That was not the case with Camp Gyno?
Well, it definitely didn't. It's certainly not a one-to-one. And in fact, I just had a conversation with another entrepreneur today who wants to do a video. And I said to her, you can't think about it as a sales driver. Mm-hmm. It's really, you have to have a much longer view and more long-term thinking when you're doing a video. It's because it is a sort of top of the funnel brand builder. It's not a converter. Mm-hmm. Obviously there are some exceptions to the rule, and there are some videos that convert, but if you're selling, in my situation, I'm not it's an expensive product, and it's a really personal product that people need to think about. It's a very considered product, and it's really emotional. So for me, I think of the videos as a way to fill the top of the funnel and let people know that my brand exists, and build and engage with a large audience versus, transacting.
Right. And if you were to give advice or share your experience of if you were to sort of go back in time and we're talking to other people who were thinking about building their brand and using video to do so, what would be the things that would be important to share with them?
So I definitely think, I was very lucky with Camp Gyno in that I was able to do it for relatively little money. I think, obviously First Moon Party costs more to produce. Video is really expensive to do right. And I do believe that part of why we had virality with both of our videos was that they were, high production value. So, they looked good, and when you watch something that's well produced, it lets you sort of get absorbed by the picture. Right. So I would say that I don't know how many people are familiar with the McKinsey purchase funnel, but you have the big awareness bucket up top, and then you try to funnel people through till you get to conversion. Video is really about the awareness, and it's also a bit of a crapshoot because you don't know if it's going to spread or not.
Right.
So I would say it has been very successful for me, and I have seen it be very successful for other businesses and individuals, but it's not a panacea. And so, obviously I get a lot of, a lot of entrepreneurs that I know ask me like, oh, can you introduce me to the team that did your video? And I'm always happy to do it. I want them to get a ton of work. But I always try to remind people that it's not, a guaranteed sure thing, and you have to think about whether or not it's right for your business.
Right.
Google AdWords works really well too.
Right. I was gonna sort of shift gears, because one of the things that you have done, and if anybody goes to the HelloFlow website, it is very clear that it has a specific voice to it that matches and point of view, which are kind of, airy, fluffy words, but when you see it, it's really powerful. That the voice of the video and kind of the sensibility you have in the video translates into your e-commerce site. How did you, and it's very strong, it's a very unique point of view. How did you come up with it? Did you just like wake up one day and start typing, or as you have crafted kind of this voice, this point of view for HelloFlow and the brand that you've built that really gets above the noise, how have you thought about it, and how have you approached it? And the more kind of tactical, the better.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't always so in sync. So that's the first thing. Gina, I know you saw the old site, so I'm sure maybe remember it wasn't super memorable, but the old site was not edgy and as like sort of aggressively forward, and I don't really have another word to describe it, as our current site. And I've been very sort of upfront with people about my fundraising experience, which was not a positive one. But one of the better meetings I had was with an investor who said to me, who's a great marketer, and he said to me, your video, Camp Gyno, is so edgy, and then I look at your site and it does not seem to go with the brand. And I was like, oh, I know that. I did the brand first, I did the video first with, sorry, not the video. I built the site first with $500 without a professional designer, with me basically mocking it up on PowerPoint. And so, that was what I got. The first video really represented the brand and what I was trying to communicate so much better. And it took me a year to get this new site launched. Wow. So in thinking about, now it would have taken me much less time, obviously, if I had ton of funding and stuff, but it shouldn't have taken that long. But by the time I sat down with the designer to really think it through, and then she brought on a copywriter, I was really clear about what I wanted my brand to stand for. And so we made a list of adjectives first. So like the tactics were, we made a list of adjectives of, what we wanted people to think of when they thought of HelloFlow. So, it was like irreverent, shameless, right? So for me, the notion of without shame or shameless is the biggest part of the brand. And, confident and stuff like that. So we had a whole list of adjectives, and we sort of played with that. The other thing is I used to have a different logo that I loved when we designed, but once I realized the direction my business was going in, I needed something that was typographic. So that was another requirement, was I needed it all to play better digitally than it was. Mm-hmm. So there were things like that. And then the other thing was that my business was different from the original vision, right? So originally it was just a subscription service. There wasn't much more to it. But then when I had the period starter kit and I saw that that was selling, I thought, okay, there's something to kits. And then I started getting emails after Camp Gyno from women at all different stages in their lives saying, like, what about menopause? What about postpartum? What about this, that, and the other? And I was like, wow, I've really resonated well beyond period. And this is great. Like, I'm going to let my customers tell me what they want. And so I took a lot of feedback.
One of the things that I am fascinated by is how you got the courage to be edgy. Because one of the things I always find is that it's really scary to be edgy. It's really scary to feel like you're going to put a stake in the ground and represent something that you kind of can't come back from after you put it out there into the universe. And I'm wondering how you approach that, because both of these videos have a very edgy sense to them, and that's almost, I think, one of the things that really makes them so special, is that you approach something that no one talks about. And it's like women running in fields, and really turned it into something quite different and a very different voice.
So I would say the first one, it wasn't that hard to be edgy because I didn't really have any audience yet. So the risk was really low. And I knew that if I wanted to stand out, I had to do something pretty bold. And honestly, I mean, I've thought about this so many times. Camp Gyno, I get that Camp Gyno felt edgy to a lot of people, and there were some things that were really sort of pushed the boundaries. But to my sensibility, it was just funny. It wasn't so out there. Like, it was, I went to sleepaway camp, and I remember what it was like to be a 12-year-old girl, and while this was obviously an exaggeration, it wasn't that far of an exaggeration, and I was kind of counting on the fact that it would resonate with them in a nostalgic sort of way.
Right.
So it just, I mean, I was worried that people were going to, not like it, but I wasn't really worried that it was going to be like so push the boundaries. I wasn't really thinking about contrasting it with the blue liquid. I was just thinking, let's tell a story.
Right. One of the things you said that I thought was so awesome was, when we were talking before, was around the fact that you approached it as something you could always change. And I think that kind of piece of that voice was really interesting to me, and I was wondering if you could kind of share that point of view, because I think so many times, I know for myself, I'm like, oh my God, if I put it out there, it's almost like it's chiseled in concrete for people to find 50 years later.
Right. So, I mean, I think that that's also just part of the entrepreneur dilemma in general, is that we're scared to do stuff because, God forbid, the world sees us fail at something. But having worked at a company like American Express, which is more than 150 years old, where there are incredibly rigid brand guidelines, I knew when doing Camp Gyno, and even when doing First Moon Party, I mean, I'm a 15-month-old company right now, and when Camp Gyno happened, I was a 4-month-old company. Like, if it didn't work, no one would have seen it, and so who cares? Like, I already made the leap by deciding I was going to build a business and telling everyone I knew I was building a business, and so I know the statistics of what it is to run a business and how many fail, and the odds are against me however I choose to go. So given that failure is such a huge possibility, I just kind of decided, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. And if I look at the landscape, no one else was talking to girls in this way, and no one else was going after this particular segment in this way. And I just thought, all right, if it doesn't work, no one will have seen it. And if it does work, great.
Right. One of the questions we have from Josh is similar to what I asked before, but maybe you could put a finer point on it, which is, how do you produce such high-quality videos on a shoestring budget? Besides, having friends who can help you produce high production value videos on a shoestring budget.
So I don't actually know the answer to that, because I do think it's hard. So there are services where you can hire a professional videographer that has the lighting and can do that. But, First Moon Party was a 2-day shoot, and to me, very expensive. Obviously, like for a big brand, it would have been probably a drop in the bucket. But when you want something high quality, you can't underestimate how good the writing needs to be, and the acting and the lighting.
Right.
And if you want good talent, you have to pay for it. And if you want good lighting, it's not just hiring a good cinematographer, but you need to rent all the equipment, and you need people who know how to use the equipment. So the answer is it's really hard. I mean, the reason why Camp Gyno I made for like a little bit more than $6,000. It was nothing in the grand scheme of things, but the first writer that was the friend, we came up with the idea over dinner, and we both fell in love with it. And he had a job at an agency, and he wanted his own reel, and then he got his creative partner involved, and they just fell in love with the script that they wrote. And for them, it was like making a low-budget movie. So they wanted the advantage of having a good reel, and I was willing to pay the money to get the crew. So I think one way I would say is, like, in every creative professional, there are people trying to make a name for themselves, and you need to find those people. And if you find the right person with the right sensibility and the right amount of talent, they may have much bigger ambitions than what they're currently doing. And if you give them a budget, they'll be able to go much further.
Well, one of the things, as I'm just thinking about then, how would someone like you, Josh, be able to do this on a budget? It's also, you took a lot of time up front to do the work around the storytelling. So there was a collaboration, but you didn't sort of outsource to an agency the writing and the story and where it would take place. So it seems like you could do a great story if you're telling it. And I always find that, when I'm not feeling particularly inspired, when somebody says it's all about storytelling or telling a great story, I'm like, that's great, but I don't know what that means.
Right.
And I think that feels like 90% of the confidence building piece of it, to then be able to say, hey, I want to go find somebody who will help me make this a reality.
Right. And I think the other, so two things I would add about that. If you find that creative person who has this desire to make videos and has also sort of worked in that experience, and you collaborate with them on the story, they're going to be much more interested in making that story and bringing it to life. The other thing is that part of why we were able to keep budget down for Camp Gyno, and also, to some extent for First Moon Party, is there were certain functions that I didn't pay for, and I just did. So Camp Gyno, we needed a camp. And so we didn't hire a location scout. I was like, I can't spend money on that. I'm going to do the research, and I'm going to find the location, and I'm going to get in touch with them. So, that was like a night on Google, and then a bunch of calls and emails, and then a trip up to the camp. So that, a location scout's more than $1,000 for a day, and then you have to get the location stuff. I was able to manage that myself, and that's, that was money we saved. And we did the same with First Moon Party. We needed location, and I was like, no, we can't. It has to be people I know who are willing to give up their homes,
right,
and I have to find it, and we can't pay a scout. So, we did things like that. Had I been able to pay a scout and pay for the location, it would have been much easier for me, but I couldn't.
And as we sort of close out here, because we all have things going on and to do, and I really appreciate your time. As you think about the differences between building a business and branding a business versus personal branding, especially for our world of successful self-employment, what are some of the things that you have learned, either specifically related to branding, or you had some great perspective on how to think about even pricing or structuring work as somebody who has been successfully self-employed, both as an individual as well as a one-woman and now multiple woman show behind HelloFlow?
So I'd say, like, in terms of the freelance consulting work, for me, the biggest way I got jobs was contacting the network of people I had worked with before. And I knew, they worked with me and they knew, like, yes, she's a marketer, but she can do other stuff. And similar to when I think about HelloFlow and the branding, listening to my customers, like, I had one really, lucrative client when I was working on my own where he and I had worked together years before. He was at a different company, and I went and met with him, and I said, like, what's stressing you out right now? And he's like, this is going on, this is going on. We're thinking of acquiring this business. I have to hire 15 people, all this stuff. And I said, you know what? You need a chief of staff, like a part-time temporary chief of staff to just get all this organized. I'm really good at building teams. Why don't I just do all of your, like, first round interviews, and that way you're only going to get quality candidates, and I'll save you, X number of hours. So that was sort of one thing, which is, he knows me as a marketer, but he also worked with me and knew I could lead a team and hire a team.
Right.
The other thing that I think you're referring to about pricing is I work really fast. And so I learned early on that if it wasn't something like that where it involved actually interviewing people and it took hours, there are certain things I know how to do. Like, I can basically write a small business, B2B marketing strategy with my eyes closed in a couple of hours, because I've done it now for multiple companies. And, I understand how to figure out the different dynamics. So I had one client that was someone I had worked with before, and he reached out to me and said, I need someone to do what you do, and I think I need, like, a marketing head for a little while to get all this stuff done. I have an agency, I have this, that, and the other. And I said to him, I don't have the time to do that for you, and also I don't think you need that. I think what you need is, like, a plan, and I can write you that plan, and why don't I just charge you a project fee for that? So for me, I knew it was only going to take me 2.5 hours, but the value to him was someone working 15 or 20 hours. So I was just able to come up with a price that seemed really reasonable to him and also seemed lucrative to me because I knew how to do the work. So I would say, like, you really have to know how fast you work and price accordingly. If you are super efficient, don't be charging by the hour, because you'll never make as much money. And everyone is going to pay you based on the value anyway. So you don't want to necessarily have people think of you as a cheap resource.
Right. As you think about any final parting words for our inaugural live event, live video here, what are some of the things that, if you could wave the magic wand and help people as they think about their branding of their small business, of their profession as a solopreneur, what do you think is just the number one thing people should remember, want to remember, are more effective if they remember?
Right. So I think it goes back to what you had said about the sort of bravery to put something out there. Like, you're always allowed to iterate, and things are fluid, and you think the whole world is going to remember you as, the person who said, I'm an XYZ type of consultant.
Right.
But the second you change the copy on your site, no one except for maybe your spouse or your best friend is going to remember that that's what you said before. So you're allowed to reinvent yourself. I mean, whether you're a business or an individual, it's okay, because you're really the only one who notices. Most of us don't pay attention. So, pick the thing that's right, and if it doesn't feel right, change it. And, eventually you'll get to the one you want to stick with because it resonates with you and whoever your customer is.
I think that is such a great note to end on. You always have the opportunity to reinvent yourself. Naama, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and look forward to seeing you in the community.
Yep, great.
All
nice
right,
to be here. Bye.